Hi, Marina, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first ever show, an episode of In Their Shoes, which is really through a lens of empathy, which I feel is more needed in today's world, and especially in tech. I wanted to introduce myself, and then I will talk about my guest, Imche here, and really want to talk about how we can understand her story, where she's come from, how she's got here. Before we get into that, I'll talk about me. Dill, I'm Dill. And basically, if you don't already know me, I work in and around the startup space. Very, very passionate about that. And I have recently founded AthenaX, which is a hub for helping women entrepreneurs and overlooked entrepreneurs in tech, just so we can add a bit more diversity to our startup ecosystem.
Much needed.
Yes. But today we're actually here to talk about Imche. And I wanted to say that I'm super excited to have you here because we've only ever met digitally, and this is our first in real life conversation, which is going to be interesting, and I think it will flow hopefully fun, and it'll be interesting for you all to learn about her story. So Imche is currently the general manager of Level 2, which is a deep tech hub, and she will talk more about that. And if you haven't actually seen her TEDx video, you should, because it's very much about how New Zealand can elevate the deep tech and deep sciences fields. And I just was really researching you actually yesterday, and I realized we have the same background. So we both did biotech. So I did mine in Otago, you were Auckland.
Yeah.
So what I guess we should start with and dive into is how did you get from biotech to deep tech?
Yes. Yeah. Like a lot of things in life, it was a series of wildly unpredictable events that just eventually took me to where I needed to be. I started out in biotech and did 4 years of that, but as soon as I got to my dissertation and had to do a research project for that, I realized that being in a lab is just not my environment. Being isolated and just talking to the same people every day.
Yeah.
I loved the research, I loved the science, didn't love the academic environment. So I then had the opportunity to join an investment committee who was at that stage looking to diversify their committee members. Joined the Return on Science committees, which is how I met Dan. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
That's where I was first exposed to working with really early stage science and engineering ideas, and I found how exciting and interesting this is. These ideas that hold so much promise, but just need a little bit of guidance to commercialize it.
Yeah.
A couple of years later, I got an email from a professional mentor of mine, Dr. Will Barker, who led me to Level 2, and I've been there for 2 years.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. So, so that's how you get to deep tech. So before, we jump deeper, a lot of questions I've been posed is what the heck is deep tech? Which, I know it's a phrase that's kind of come up recently, and I was wondering if you could explain what that means from your point of view as well. Yeah.
Yes, deep tech is very interesting.
Yeah.
It's a term that describes companies that are working on the frontier of new industries. It's often also called frontier tech. But these are companies that are based on fundamental science and radical engineering innovations that are doing something brand new. So you'll find that these companies are often in areas as varied as robotics or biotech, space tech, AI, the tech of the future, essentially. These companies also typically have a lot of intellectual property behind them and have very long time horizons, which makes it a particularly challenging industry.
And like, what would the future be for New Zealand in deep tech? Because yes, we've seen the Rocket Lab and LanzaTech. They're probably like the cornerstone deep tech companies, if I'm right. And like, how does the future look like for us? Like, how do we develop these?
Yeah, no, LanzaTech and Rocket Lab are really great examples of how New Zealand has allowed this sort of technology to develop. Our legislation was flexible enough to accommodate the ambitions of Peter Beck, and that's an encouraging environment to be in. However, I don't think we've done as well as we could in the areas of deep tech specifically. But that's about to change. Like, I think that over the next 5 to 10 years, there will be a boom in deep tech startups because there's been a renewed interest in this space, or a new interest in this space. You see this with the increased funding for the technology incubator programs. You see this with the $300 million fund of funds that the government's introduced. These were all mechanisms to try and encourage fundamental science to come out of the lab and into the market. And I think that's what we're going to see over the next decade or so. Okay,
great. So like, that is the level of investment that is required, you're saying, like, to get deep tech and sciences from the lab out and develop them and commercialize them.
It's relatively cheap and straightforward and quick to get something like an app or a digital marketplace off the ground. With deep tech, where so much of what's required is fundamental research, it does take a long time. LanzaTech's a good example. They've been around for over 15 years and have only just a couple of years ago built their first commercial plant. That was a long time horizon. And I think we need to understand that it's going to take time and expand our view. Like, we have to think about the long term, which I think New Zealand's been not so great at recently, but it's changing.
That's exciting. And then, in terms of biotech, a field itself, which obviously we were both very fascinated by it, to enter it and then to come out and think, oh, well, there's not many jobs here, or like there's not many biotech companies. Is that era gone for us? Or do you think like there could be spaces for biotech companies to exist in New Zealand?
We have a strong fundamental, we have a good start when it comes to ag biotech. There's a lot of expertise that we have in New Zealand that we can leverage to get further. One thing, what makes up a large percentage of biotech industries in other countries is pharma and pharmaceuticals. Not something we do a huge amount of here, but that's actually really good because that allows us to explore things like food tech, which is biotech, ag tech, plant biotech, which I'm seeing a lot more of recently, and more importantly, clean biotech, similar to what LanzaTech was doing, similar to what Mint Innovation is doing now. There are opportunities. It's going to change slowly. There are a lot of biotech graduates who are doing work that's completely unrelated to biotech. But it's also about creating those opportunities for ourselves. So many of the frustrated scientists that I've met who haven't found the right work that they wanted to do went and started their own companies so that they can do what they want to do. And there's opportunities to do that now.
Okay. And so then, like, what would you say if there was like a little young person who has perhaps done a research project and was like, there's an area to commercialize this? How would they then get that out of the lab and into the marketplace right now within our ecosystem?
There are a few different organizations that are doing a lot of work to support this.
Okay.
It starts with something like the Return on Science Investment Committees or the KiwiNet Investment Committee, who are there to help commercialize early stage science. That's a really good place to start. They will give you advice, connections, mentorship to get you started on that journey. But that is just the start. Because after that comes investment. After that comes finding lab space. After that comes finding the right advisors. It's going to be a journey. It's about familiarising yourself with the ecosystem if you want to stay in New Zealand, and following the opportunities as they present themselves to you.
Yeah.
So you start with a hub like Return on Science or KiwiNet or Level 2,
Yeah.
because they will be able to open up the next step for you. And after that, another few steps will open up.
Yeah.
Just keep your eye out for opportunities every single day.
Yeah, I think that makes sense to be plugged into a hub or someone within the ecosystem that can then introduce you to other elements of the ecosystem, so you can hopefully, like you said, get to the next like value point or like protect your IP in that space, because that's very important. Let's come back to us and the fact that we are women in tech, which is a very small proportion of our tech industry. It's still around about 26% of tech of all, throughout New Zealand. And so as a woman in this field, what sort of would you say is like some of the challenges that we face, especially more so in deep tech? Because I'm assuming it's the same, like there's still a gender gap there. So I would love to know like what challenges there are for women entering this space and staying for the long run.
Yeah, the gender gap at deep tech is undeniable. Just using Level 2 as an example, we have about 130 residents on site across 17 companies. Of those 130, about 27% are women. So it's a huge gap. That's undeniable. Personal challenges mostly stems from a bias against women in tech. We're seen as not experienced enough, not to be taken seriously, which is incredibly frustrating. I was doing a presentation for the board of one of the larger universities in Auckland a little while ago, and I was assumed to be the personal assistant of the person who's doing the presentation.
I've been there too. Yeah.
Which makes you doubt yourself in that environment. You have been given this opportunity. There is no reason for you to doubt yourself.
Yeah.
So there's undeniable gender gaps. There is definitely some challenges that we run up against. And it largely comes down to just not being taken seriously, which is incredibly insulting. I mean, some of the women in tech that I know are extraordinary people.
Yeah.
And to have them be doubted as such is insulting and archaic.
It's true. And I mean, we all have different personalities. Like, even though we come from the feminine side of the world, some of us are stronger and more louder speaking, and some of us are like feminine and softer and reserved. And, I feel like I've been told multiple times I'm too nice, and I have no idea whether that's an insult or a compliment, but I'm just going to use it because that's just me. And like, I just felt like, throughout my career in the last, I guess, decade, I have not, like in university, I felt we were always on equal par with our male colleagues. Well, that's what I always, felt in working with teams and stuff. But coming in and working with Chiasma as well, we were always, each other's friends. We didn't see gender. But you come out and it's still a male's world, especially more so in tech. And that is very hard to, like, but quite confrontational when you first enter and you're like, wait, I'm treated slightly differently. Is it my gender? And you're right, do doubt yourself. So I started my career not being very confident about me. And that has changed, obviously, over the last few years when you're like, hold on, we need to, speak up more and have more stories told like yours and mine one day. And then, talk more about our ideas in tech, because we need more sort of a feminine perspective in technology, so that, it's more applicable to all types of human beings. And so I guess that's the other element of tech. What roles do you see for women in tech, other than the tech heavy roles like coding biosciences and stuff. Like, what other roles can women play to make tech a more comfortable place to be in, like, and build products that make sense, and are more empathetic. That's what I would say.
You touched on a couple of points there, so I'm just going to address a few of them. I think it has less to do with feminine qualities that women aren't seen as capable in tech. It has more to do with that there's a particular idea of what a person in tech looks like, and anyone who deviates from that is not taken as seriously, whether that's by virtue of being women, or whether it's by virtue of having come from a different country and speaking with an accent. I mean, even that is biased against. I think it's undeniable that there's a gender gap, but it's also that this ideal of a tech entrepreneur is a very particular ideal, and anyone other than that is dismissed. And I think that's something that we need to be very, very cautious of, especially when having conversations about women in tech, because it's not just about women in tech, it's about underrepresented minorities in tech. So what sort of roles can women play in this industry? All of them. Absolutely all of them. Wherever that person's interest lies. And then it's just about taking opportunities where they scare you, and running with them. One of the pieces of advice that I've given to a young female founder recently of a space tech company, she's very cool, is to take opportunities that scare you. If you're given an opportunity to apply for a role that you feel you're not quite ready for, if you're given the opportunity to meet someone that you're very nervous about being introduced to, do it, because that's going to stretch you. That's going to get you out of your comfort zone. That's going to teach you. Yeah. So go for it. Whatever role you want to play in tech, play it.
Yeah. That's quite true. I mean, there has to be like a sense of fearlessness when you jump into tech. Like, you have to be able to know that it is a male field, and you have to stay true to yourself and not act exactly as our male counterparts, but bring ourselves to it, and that's the cool part, I feel.
I spoke to her very frankly during that conversation. I told her directly that she's going to run up against some people who don't take her seriously, and that she's going to have to shovel a lot of bullshit in her career, and as long as she's prepared for that, she'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, okay, so you touched on the fact that, like, tech entrepreneurs, even now that I'm thinking of it, I'm like thinking of this like male user persona type thing, but actually it's all of us, we're very different, and hopefully we'll get to see more, and more of them that reflect what New Zealand is now becoming, and the up and coming different races and minorities, and so that's going to be exciting. But I think entrepreneurship is obviously a phrase that not necessarily for someone who started a company. It's just someone who's started and built something, and that applies to you as well. And I mean, how can you talk me through that? Like, how do you feel as an entrepreneur? And as we get into that, I would also want to know, like, how you run your day to day, because that's something I was like, I really want to know how your day is done daily, in your actual shoes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start there.
Okay. Cool.
My days start early.
Okay.
I often train in the morning. I've realized that my physical well-being affects my mental and emotional well-being tremendously. So I prioritize physical activity, which often happens first thing in the morning, because in the evenings I've just got far too much on usually. My days are varied. Part of the reason why I disliked being in the lab while I was doing my research is because every day was going to be the same. Running level 2, I could be doing a podcast in the morning and then talking to potential investors in the afternoon. I can be running around managing a construction site, because we've just expanded our site. We've got about an extra 450 square meters of new lab space. Wow. And we've got another 600 coming up before the end of the year. Cool. So running that construction project is also on my to-do list. Recently, I've also had the opportunity to step out of the day-to-day and think strategically about what the next couple of years at level 2 holds.
Yeah.
So finding time to be strategic and think long term is something I have to prioritize. Otherwise, I'm just stuck in the day to day. It's varied. Everything from facilities management to
That's a lot.
Making investment decisions to finding interesting opportunities for interesting people.
And then obviously it's one topic to another topic. How do you do the switching? Like, I found that really hard when I was in operations. I was like, you're dealing with multiple things, and then you have to like completely switch your mindset. Okay, now let's talk money.
Yes. So I used to do this thing where I would jump directly from one thing to the other. I would get out of an investor meeting and straight into then a meeting with the builders, then straight into a conversation with a potential resident. But you have to take a few minutes to switch gears.
Yeah.
You have to take a few minutes to just close off what you've just done, whether that's jotting a few notes down or making a couple of notes on your to-do list, and then getting ready for the next thing. You have to take a couple of minutes, it just needs to be a few, to change gears. Going from one thing directly onto the other leaves me feeling frazzled and anxious at the end of the day because I haven't processed my day appropriately as it happened. So I think that's one of the larger things that I've learned over the last few months is taking a few minutes to switch gears between those things.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yeah.
I definitely, that's probably one of the things that left me quite tired. And at the end of days when you're like, and then you have no time at the end to even like process what just happened. Yeah. And so I still am like a major note taker because I know I have to go back and read what just happened in the day. But your me time, is that the morning, or is that when you're doing your exercising and your...
Yeah, my me time is definitely early in the morning.
Yeah.
5:15 on my bike to the gym.
Really?
When it's still a little bit dark out, the air is still cool. That's I'm starting my day, and this is my time. I feel like my evenings are so often populated by other people's expectations, whether it's dinner with friends, whether it's attending a networking event. Yeah. My evenings belong to other people. My mornings are mine.
Yeah. That's important.
But that's because I am naturally a morning person. For other people, it can be that period between 10 o'clock at night and 1 o'clock in the morning because that's their optimum time and also quiet time for them. Okay. So you just have to carve it out, and mornings just work for me.
Yeah, and the me time is very important because when you are talking to people, depends... There's the whole concept of introvert, extrovert, and how much energy each one will spend with people. And so, that energy is a lot, and like there's only a certain amount of energy. And so, you want to spend it carefully and not like, because it seems like you're quite social at the end of days. And so that means that, you by the end of the day, you still have to like keep going. Whereas I'm the opposite. I'm like, I do love to do like my meditation in the mornings and stuff. Because the morning, you're right, it sets you up for the day, right? Because you're like, okay, well, I don't want to be frazzled as I enter my full-on day. But I'm like more like after the day's over, I just want to like isolate and go into my hole. But that's because I don't want to talk to anyone. I just need to get ready and sleep. But that's me now, and I think that's also due to like being tired over the years of working in tech.
But you have to carve that time out. You have to consciously make some time to sift through your day, to quiet the mind. To take some time, and you have to protect that time. It's so easy to have that absorbed by other people's demands.
That's so true. Boundaries. But one important thing is I've noticed that you're very confident, even from like before and, chiasma days. I've obviously watched you from afar. Where does that come from? Were you born with it? Like, is there an element of your childhood or?
I think part of it has to do with being an immigrant.
Yeah.
So I moved to New Zealand in my late teens, which is a huge thing for a young person to undergo, especially against their will. I did not want to move countries. But having to go through that, having to start from scratch as a teenager takes a bit of putting yourself outside of your comfort zone. You mentioned fearlessness earlier. That's something that's not inherent. I think that's something that anyone can develop. But fearlessness leads you to take on opportunities that you're a little bit afraid of. It leads you to put it leads you to opportunities where you can stretch yourself a little bit. So I think it came from being completely taken out of my comfort zone and moved to New Zealand, and then having to find my own way from there on. I think confidence can be developed. I don't think it's something that's inherent.
That's awesome. I mean, I've a lot of people go through this journey of like moving countries to New Zealand. Obviously, like it's an amazing place to settle in, and it takes like some adjustment depending where you're from. But yeah, I think I had a different experience. But yeah, no, that's cool. And as we sort of like wrap up our conversation here, like which started with deep tech and now into like personal, how do we live our days? I really want to talk about like your future plans and some of the newer stuff you're working on, which could be of interest to people listening.
Yeah. So for the last couple of years, Level 2 has sort of transitioned from a sort of skunks works operation to something that is a bit more visible, has a bit of recognition, is now known as being a deep tech hub. For the next few years, we're focusing a lot more on investments, which is something we've not done much of. We're making investments into 2 companies this month, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and that'll ensure that we have some skin in the game to support these companies even more than we already are. So as part of this investment, we're also putting these companies through what we're calling the Launch Lab program, where we're giving these companies very bespoke, very comprehensive support for a 6-month period. So these are really early stage companies who are an idea that just need some support to get off the ground. So we're piloting this with these 2 companies this year, to hopefully double or triple that next year, and build the program a bit more formally based on how this year goes. But that's something I've been really excited about. I'm excited to move away from managing the facility and managing the community to making more decisions around investment and startup support, which is very exciting. There's a couple of other things on the horizon as well. There's the Rangatahi Institute, where we're which is under the National Science Challenge, where we're giving younger researchers an opportunity to work on research projects that they think are going to impact the future. It's surprising to me to see how many people are involved with the National Science Challenge who are over 50. How can we make decisions about our future of science and technology without involving the people of the future?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the idea behind the Rangatahi Institute, which I'm very excited about.
That is awesome. So it's like a span of activities from like, putting investment into some up-and-coming deep tech startups, which is super interesting, actually, because I haven't seen or heard of a lot of them other than our big names. So that's going to be fun to hear more of these startups come up. And then working with the young and up-and-coming science researchers who have ideas that want to be commercialized. And that is really where we come from, because we are a product of, like, the knowledge economy, right? Like the whole idea of that we need to move into a knowledge-based economy, which is still, I know we've said we're moving into digital economy now, but we still have to get the foundations correct. And I think this is going to be a very exciting year, personally, and for you as well. And I think we'll wrap up there, but I really want to thank you because you have been amazing to talk to and watch from afar, and
that's very kind.
I just love that we shared some experiences that were similar, and I did not know, but I think people listening will have a good idea of what it means to be you right now, and then what opportunities are coming up. So I guess they should just Google Level 2.
Yeah, keep an eye on what we keep an eye on what we put out. Keep an eye on what I'm up to. There's going to be some interesting things coming up over the next 12 months.
Oh my god, exciting! Well, I am gonna keep in touch with you. I've got something for you.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it's fine. Oh my gosh, we will wrap it up here, and I just want to say thank you to the Switch team as well for having us today. It's been fun, and hopefully we will have another amazing guest next week, same time. So, thank you.
Excellent.
Got you a gift.